And I'm also going to hit record now so we can put that on. You can have that recording later too. And there might be some questions in the Facebook group we can answer after the live radio is over. And when we do go to break, when he tells us we have to go to break, we'll just be quiet for a little bit so that he can cue up the commercial and then we can talk. Okay.
All right, 12 seconds and we'll get started.
Welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Over the next hour, you will hear raw, honest, and inspiring conversation between Lynsie and her guests, discussing how to thrive, live joyfully, and abundantly in spite of life's challenges. Now, here is your host, Lynsie McKeown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically. I am your host, Lynsie McKeown, and I am so honored to be here today with an amazing guest. And we're going to be talking about how to cultivate resilience, a resilient mindset as you heal. And you can be healing from trauma, you can be healing from relationships, you can be healing from grief. There's just so many different ways to heal, and why it's so important to have a resilient mindset as we go through challenging times. Now, before we get started, what I would love to do is what we always do is just take a moment to stop, pause, and breathe so that we can connect to our bodies, to our breath, and to each other. So wherever you are, if it's safe, you can close your eyes, just sit or stand still or even lie down and take several nice, deep, full belly breaths, directing the breath all the way down into your belly so that when you breathe in, you feel the belly move away from the spine. And when you breathe out, the belly moves towards the spine like a gentle hug. And just continue to take several more deep breaths. Awareness is staying here at the belly and that space between the belly and the pelvic floor. And just asking yourself, have you ever experienced trauma, grief, betrayal, or harm? It could be physical, mental, or emotional harm. And continue to deep breathe into the belly. And allow space just for those emotions and those thoughts to come to the surface. When we take deep, full breaths, we give our bodies permission to experience whatever it needs to experience in a very safe and soothing way. And so as we dive deeper into this topic of how to cultivate resilience as we heal, if you need to come back to this breath at any point in time, do so and let it be a soothing balm for you. And so let's go ahead and make our way back so we can invite our lovely guest in today, Katherine Nies. Now, when I first started Women Thriving Unapologetically radio show, I put out a call on a local business Facebook group for women who are interested in sharing their stories. And Katherine was one of the first to, raise her hand, so to speak, and jump in and say, I would love to share my story. And we got on a call and connected. And I just absolutely loved her from the moment that we started talking about and sharing our stories. Now, Katherine is a mother, pianist, a singer, a filmmaker, teacher, and collaborative artist. And her work is driven by her passion to help people find a deeper connection to themselves, each other, and their communities through music, art, and storytelling. She's collaborated with artists from the Metropolitan Opera, Broadway, and the Kennedy Center. And she's led workshops about how to empower the mind and body through anxiety as a performer, and a sought-after mentor in both piano performance and improvisation. Katherine has an unquenchable curiosity to focus on humans and their stories. She has a passion for using music and the arts as a way for us to connect deep with each other and find our way home. So she's going to share with us today, hopefully, the way that she found her way back home to herself and to her new beautiful life. So welcome, Katherine. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Lynsie. I'm so honored to be here.
Oh, I'm the one who's honored to have you. You're like, when you said yes, I was like, oh, this is going to be such an amazing conversation today. And what some of you, if you're listening from the Women Thriving Unapologetically Facebook group, you get to see Katherine and myself have this conversation and also hear what happens before we go live and during the breaks and what happens after the live. And what we were having a conversation was like, okay, Katherine, there's several ways we could start this conversation. We could start with some small talk just to kind of warm up. Not that it's small talk, but let's, the smaller, gentler way to warm up and get comfortable. Or do we just want to dive right into the big stuff? It's like, I want to dive right into the big stuff. Like, yes, I love that.
Let's go. Let's do this.
And so, the topic is just how do we create resilience, as we heal and what we're healing from. And you've had, a lot of trauma that you had to heal from and, this deep wounding. And I'd love to hear from you, your story, but also, what trauma means to you. We throw that word around a lot right nowadays, but what does it actually mean to you?
Yeah. So for me, trauma means a shattering of something. So it could be a shattering of anything that you hold dear or just that you link to your own existence. And so I like to equate it to like a piece of pottery breaking, just shattering on the floor. There are pieces everywhere. You can have spiritual trauma, relationship trauma, physical trauma, family trauma. And, we could take a whole episode to talk about generational trauma. So it's a real thing. It exists. We are humans. We have souls. Trauma exists. So I like to adapt. I discovered years ago this beautiful philosophy called Kintsugi, which is this Japanese philosophy about how to put a broken piece of pottery back together. And their way of doing it is to acknowledge, first of all, that the pottery was broken. They acknowledge that there are pieces everywhere. And then they slowly pick them back up. And instead of gluing it back together so that it looks like it never had been broken, they take this beautiful golden lacquer. And each piece that's put together has this little line of gold that strings it and connects it from one point to the next. So that when the pottery is put back together and is complete, it is a completely new art form. And the word kintsugi actually means the golden joinery. So it's suddenly you have this beautiful piece of art, and it's part of the Zen mindset of acknowledging that truth and the reality of the situation is what it is. So it's celebrating the fact that you are where you are now and celebrating the journey, celebrating the golden joinery. That's why I love storytelling, because I think we all have our own golden joinery, and we're all these art forms that have this beautiful connecting golden parts within us to reflect the whole.
And I
So
absolutely love this idea of the golden joinery that, okay, we're all suffering and we all will all suffer and we will all have wounding at some point in our life. And some of it will feel catastrophic. Some of it will feel, minor compared to other times that we've been injured or harmed. But if we just can see that each of these, these experiences in our life is where we feel broken, and just look at the pieces and be like, okay, I'm not really broken. All I have to do is take these pieces where I've been feel shattered and start to put them together and join them together, and not where they look like they've been, where you can tell. It becomes something more when you are shattered apart. A lot of times they say that that's where the light can come through. And then when you put those pieces back together, especially with that gold lacquer, it's almost as if you can see, and what I'm visioning is that the light is coming through and has brought you together into this something that could be even more beautiful than it was before. So I love that.
Yeah, it does. The golden joinery, and it's not meant to disguise what happened either. It's accepting what happened. And I think for someone like me who's very eager to get on with life and live and do and just live as best they can, it's very easy for me to just say, okay, that happened, moving on, and that isn't part of the healing process. The healing process is to acknowledge what happened and what
If you just
is.
go and move on, you're not actually picking the pieces up and joining them together
No, you're
and
just like
moving parts of
sweeping them
yourself.
up and like jamming them, and that's not a comprehensive and beautiful way to live. We have to grieve. We have to acknowledge what happened and get our golden joinery. And each person will have their own journey to that golden joinery. And yeah, so for me, resilience is going to look different than it would for someone else. And so I'm excited to share what my golden joinery was, and I hope it will encourage other people to find theirs.
And I love the piece, like when you say, when we pick the pieces up and put them back together in a way that's, joined by light and love or self-compassion or healing, you're gonna look completely different. And even though we can have similar suffering in our life, the way that we put our pieces back together are going to be different, and it's going to allow us to be uniquely us when we do bring those fragmented pieces back together.
I like that, Lynsie. Yeah. Very, very true. Yeah, there's actually a song called Kintsugi, and my daughter and I love to listen to it. You should check it out on Spotify. It's by Gabrielle Applin. And I think I had even written down, she said in one of her verses, all my scars are golden. And I really like that a lot too. Just the idea of your scars can be golden. They can be part of your artwork instead of something to hide.
All my scars are golden.
All my scars are golden. And then she said, my life will be a map you can trace. So that's also part of the philosophy, which is you can trace the history of what happened with this piece of pottery. So you're this map, this golden map.
And it feels like it gives you a sense of empowerment. Like, okay, this is the pathway, and my scars are golden. They're not something to be ashamed of or to look away from or to hide, but this is, and you stand there in that power of your story and be able to own it. And like, okay, this is my map that I took, and it may be helpful to you, but you're also going to have to create your own pathway.
Yes. Ultimately, this is your healing journey, that you take responsibility for it, and it is yours to own. And I think that's what makes it such a great adventure, right? Like this is your journey.
Are you ready to dive in and share with us some of your journey?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah. So again, we talked about different types of trauma. And so for me, the types of trauma that I experienced were religious trauma. I had physical trauma, and then like family trauma as well. So with the I think the religious trauma and the physical trauma kind of went hand in hand. 10 years ago, I was married to someone who did not know how to express himself in a kind and empathetic way, and would use physical abuse and verbal abuse to get his message across. So for years, I was living in fear every day. I was very scared. I was walking on eggshells. I would be physically harmed all the time. I was also just really, that's I think where the religious abuse came in, because I was eventually at a place where I believed that I deserved to be treated that way. So the spirit, that was just a very dark time for my spirit, where I was wondering, what am I doing wrong? Why am I being treated this way? I've got to get better. I've got to do better so that way I can be loved. And so that is a lot to unpack there. And because his family and him were part of a very conservative church in DC that didn't believe in divorce, really. Like divorce was not an option. So when I went to the family and to the church for help, it was completely covered up because it was instead of looking at the problem as, okay, there's anger, there's trauma, let's work on healing this in whatever way this is going to look, it was, we are going to preserve the marriage. And I feel like that's where a lot of toxicity within churches can happen, is when the two people's health and wellness is completely overlooked, and this dogmatic view of a particular virtue is exaggerated over everything else, and that's legalism. And so legalism is very toxic, and domestic violence happens across all races, all backgrounds, all financial backgrounds. It is amazing to me how, when I eventually was able to get out and seek help in a shelter, how many women were getting abused by very high profile men in DC, senators, pastors. It's everywhere. So my body was living in escape mode and survival mode for many years, and trying to protect my daughter was, she was 3 at the time. It was very scary. So there was that abuse, and then the divorce. And then right after that, my brother got diagnosed with cancer, and we lost him within 6 months. So
Katherine, I just want to pause, and I know there's more to this, but just for everyone just to take a breath, because it is so
that
much.
was a lot. That was a lot.
And I have no doubt that this is touching on the hearts, and maybe they can even feel it in their bellies. Women that are experiencing the same thing or have experienced the same thing, that you're in a relationship where you're being physically abused nearly every day, and the fear of that, and the walking on eggshells, and just the really the terror of the abuse that might happen that day. You just never know. You're always in a trauma response. And then just feeling trapped and unseen, like to go, like be in this religious organization that is like home to you. And then you go and seek help, and then realize that you're not as valuable as the institution of marriage, that you are not really, your person is not as valuable as the sanctity of this contract.
Exactly.
And so that is like really just an enormous pain to carry. And what you said about what am I doing wrong, and what do I need to do to feel loved, and feeling like in that moment there's nothing that you can do. So I just really honor you for having the bravery to share that with all of us, because that's no small thing. And then also to have that courage to, like, okay, to have to leave that and be fearful, to actually have to leave your entire way of living and being and knowing, in order to escape that and to protect your young daughter. It's not just protecting yourself, but you had a 3-year-old child as well. So there's so much that was going on within you. So just deep breath in on that one.
Thank you.
And I can't even believe that we are already coming up onto our first break. But when we come back, I would love for you to continue to share that. And, what were the steps that you took to really be able to step away from that, to be able to step away from, because a lot of women feel trapped. And they're in that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn state, and they don't know what to do or how to escape. So I would love for you to share that part of the story when we come back.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to go to our first break, but please don't go anywhere. We're having an amazing conversation. We already went really deep already with Katherine Nies, as she wanted to do, and as I wanted to
dive
do.
in.
Yeah. And if you're joining in our Women Thriving Unapologetically Facebook community, just please pop in and write down a question and comment, and then we'll be sure to answer that when we can. Okay, we'll be right back.
All right, good segment, all clear.
Thank you. You just said you're so used to, I think you're so used to sharing that. It's just such like, I could feel like.
it is a lot. And I really appreciate you just making space for all that, and then helping me breathe after saying that, because it still is very triggering, Lynsie, like to talk
Yeah,
about.
I could feel I could feel some emotions coming up. I could feel like a little bit of a tightness in the solar plexus. And I'm like,
Yeah.
even a little tears were coming.
Yeah, thank you for being so empathetic and just, creating that safe space to talk about it.
Of course. I mean, I just
Yeah.
appreciate that you are so willing to share so much, because all of this can be very triggering. Okay, I'm just gonna have to, this piece of hair just keeps, it's gone.
And my hair wasn't causing
I can't hear
anything. Okay, good. Good. I'm so glad my internet's working today really well.
I know.
Whew.
But yeah, just holding, like being able to share all of this, because there's so many elements that can be triggering for people around,
Yes.
high profile relationships, around religious organizations, the abuse that can happen in these relationships. But bringing, honesty to this and bringing it forward is so incredibly important, to allow women to have, a sense of feeling like they're not alone, and also to have understand that they too can find a way out with the right support.
Yes. There is always a way out. Always is.
So we'll continue. I know there's a little bit more that you wanted to share around that. And
I don't know. I feel like, well, we have until it was 10:50, right? It's 10:58.
10:57.
So 10:57. So I mean, that might be it. Like, I touched a little bit on what that was, and we can spend the rest of the time talking about the golden joinery.
Okay.
I'm happy to dive deeper in. So I'll go with your guidance as to how much more of that trauma you want me to talk about versus the golden joinery part. So I'll follow your lead on that.
Sounds good.
We are coming back. Sorry to jump in here.
Okay, we're going back.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically on Voice America's Empowerment Channel. And I am here today with Katherine Nies, and we are diving right in to the big stuff on how to heal trauma, and create a resilient mindset as we navigate the challenges that come from being in relationships where we are either physically, mentally, emotionally abused. And that can be in partnership, our spouse, it could be in a religious organization, which is Katherine's personal experience that we're pulling from today. And before we left the show, Katherine was sharing how a little bit about her story and the enormity of it, and we're going to lead into the second part of the show on how she was able to leave a marriage, a high profile marriage, leave her community, her church, and to really save herself as well as her young daughter.
Yeah, thank you again, Lynsie, for creating the safe space to talk about all these things. It really means a lot to me. Yeah, like it definitely, I can feel my throat getting so tight talking about these things. So it really means a lot to have this amazing space to share.
And to voice, like, this is the power of our community.
And it's right there.
You know this. I mean, you're I'm literally telling this to the music.
No, you couldn't be more right. Like that. Yeah. And a lot of women that I've talked to who have dealt with trauma, they get a lot of manifestations of that anxiety or trauma right there onto their throat area, which makes so much sense. Also, I've noticed that women will point to their heart. And I will do the same. If I'm like grieving or feeling something very deep, it's my right hand going over my heart, which is a signal of grief. So like we are such beautiful living creatures that respond to all the stimuli around us. And I think part of that healing journey for me was also reconnecting with my body, because it was kind of like for the first time in my adult life, I was able to decide, oh, my body belongs to me. It wasn't something that was taught to me in that mindset of my marriage. It belonged to God, it belonged to my husband, but I did not have power over my own body. And therefore, women's tuition thrives on being able to check in with how you're feeling all over your body. And so my intuition was completely muted. And so listening, but it never went away. And that's the really exciting part, is your intuition is always there. It is going to be there. And you just have to get to a place where you are safe enough to be able to listen to it again. And that to me is like the start of that golden joinery, is like re-listening to that voice and then following its path throughout the journey.
One, getting to a safe space, because if you're always activated, if you're always in fear, you can't, it's nearly impossible to do that deeper inner work. That there has to be a sense of safety and security before we can actually start to heal. So getting yourself to that place where you can be in a place where you can say, okay, like I'm going to start to explore, my own body again, and allow some of these sensations to come forward, and understanding that this is my body. It's not, someone else doesn't own my body. This is my body and my experience of my body. And how can I start to really just give that space for the experiences to come forward? Because if we keep them packed down, they're never really going to heal. Allow them to come forward into the surface. So how did you how did you just find that what was that defining moment where you're like, okay, I've got to get out of here? And how did you do that?
I think there wasn't one culminating moment. There was just many moments leading up to this particular point in time where I realized if I didn't get out, my life was in danger, and my daughter's life was in danger as well. So it was literally just a moment of like, it's survival. We have to get out. And I was very, very lucky to have a friend who was willing to do everything she could to help me find safety. And I think that was a moment of hope where I remember her saying to me, you realize that you're running towards love, right? You're not running away from love.
Oh,
and that was, I know, right? Like when there's this really sad moment where you realize that what you've been fighting for and what you have been sacrificing for isn't actually the love that you thought it was. It was power, it was control. There might have been love in there somewhere, but for the most part, it's being completely just destroyed by all of these other really tragic things. But when you do leave something toxic, there can be this guilt within you that's like, I'm running away. I'm not giving this everything I could. But her just beautiful words where she held my hand and she said, you're running towards love. You're not running away from love. That was the first step into being like, wow, what else can I explore? Of all these things that I had been believing for so long, what do I actually believe? And it was this very exciting moment of like, I think there's a whole world out there waiting for me. I feel terrified, but I want to know what it is. So it was this very thirsty curiosity that expanded way beyond the trauma and the pain that I was feeling. It was just this, I saw light and I was like, I want that. I really want that.
Even though there was, immense fear there to just because you're leaving something known, even though the known is, harming you and has a potential to harm your daughter,
Mhm.
it's still what's known. So our brain's like,
Absolutely.
oh, there's still a sense of safety here, even though
And
it's not safe.
familiarity. Yeah, and
Yeah, and
familiarity.
to have the bravery to finally leave and then go towards an unknown, which is scary.
Mhm.
But I love how you said, okay, I'm going towards, and this is how I know when things are really aligned with me, is that, okay, I'm going towards something that's unknown and it's scary. However, I'm still excited about it.
Oh yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I think, okay, that's how I know that I'm moving with spirit and I'm moving towards love
Mhm.
and not away from love.
Yes. And that's the intuition right there. Reaching its hand up, saying, yes, that's it. Keep going. Keep
Yeah,
going.
because if we're staying in something that, we might be a little bit afraid of,
Mhm.
but there's that terror or um it's not doesn't feel like love. There's like what you said, feeling guilty or
Mhm.
feeling less than or unworthy or staying with your grief. That's not
Mhm.
moving towards love. That's not moving us
Mhm.
towards really pulling all of our shattered pieces back together. It's staying shattered.
It's staying shattered. Yes. Yes. So that moving towards love was like that very defining moment of I guess, the golden joinery
Now, was
where
that love for yourself or was that love? How would you say, like when you say I'm moving towards love, like where did you
yeah.
feel that in your body? Does it feel like you're moving towards love for yourself or for
Oh,
spirit?
wow. It felt like I was moving towards an all-encompassing kind of love that's going to manifest in different ways at different times of my life. So for the first, year or two, it was more just like love for self again, which I had to really work hard to do. I didn't really have a sense of self at that point. I was always looking to external rules to tell me who I was or what I should believe. So coming to a place of empowerment where I can be like, no, what do I really feel? What do I really love to do? There's this beautiful quote from Mary Oliver that really helped me align well with this idea of love. And she said, you do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. The sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes over the prairies and the deep trees and the mountains and rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination and it calls you like wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. And I
Mm,
remember reading that and thinking, I want to find my place in the family of things. And that was my another motivator to decide, okay, what does that mean for me? So self-love, first of all, was really important and key.
and I think everyone wants to find their place in the family of things. And so often we are looking outside of ourselves for that place, like asking someone else, like, where am I meant to be? What am I meant to be doing? But it
Mhm.
does take that act of self-love and exploration to be like, okay, to find it for yourself and to claim it for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what are some of the tools that you use to, because we say self-love a lot, but it's that's not we can say it easily, but it's not an easy thing to actually and like feel completely embodied with. So what are some of the tools that you use to help you reclaim this love for yourself?
Yeah. I think for me, the very first part was again that deep, insatiable curiosity. It was like, I really want to um, find out what life's all about. I want to, again, it's that desire to find my place in the family of things again. And so it was like this deep motivation within me, which seemed kind of impossible at the time. So I had really severe PTSD. And as anyone who has dealt with PTSD or any sort of like trauma recovery knows, it is not a linear line. It is not linear towards recovery at all. It's very up and down. There was definitely a point where like eating was just really difficult. I just couldn't eat. I wanted to eat. I was hungry. I just couldn't eat. I remember being terrified to just stand in line at the grocery store because that made me feel trapped. I couldn't be near any man for a very long time. Anytime a man got kind of close to me, my whole body kind of shut down. So there was a lot of trauma. And I just remember thinking, I can barely make it through one day. How am I possibly going to do this magical manifesting life that I want for myself? Because I can't even go to CVS. Like I can't even stand in line. The most important part of getting going in that light-seeking direction is to do what you can with what you have right now. And then have a bigger goal, a more beautiful vision for yourself that you want. So I had my bucket list of an ideal life that I wanted for myself. And then I had a very practical step that I could take each day to get there. And the kindness to speak to myself when that day might not have gone as I wanted it to. When you see a little child learning something new, they're going to make a mistake. They're going to fall. They're going to, struggle. But I really like how most kids have this dialogue of, whoops, try again. Like they're just like, oh, that didn't work. Let me try this. Oh, that didn't work. And they're very forgiving of themselves. They're just willing to try.
And they have a little fun with it and play with it. And
like, oops.
And I know that might sound like, I'm not to trivialize the pain that people are trying to heal from, but joy is actually the closest frequency to love, like the love of the universe, and spirit and God, or whatever you want to call this energy of the universe. Joy is that frequency. And so if we can do little things that bring us joy, then it's almost like helping us step towards that big goal that we have with greater ease.
Oh, yes.
And so I love how you took, okay, I have this big goal, but I'm so far away from it. If I just look at this big goal, it feels like I'm never going to get there, but it's just like, what is the one thing that I can do today and allow myself to be forgiving of whatever is coming up, the emotions, like forgive myself for having judgment, forgive myself for beating myself up, and just come back to what's this one small thing that I can do and celebrate that, just like a little kid would celebrate. Like, look what I did.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. No, I just,
oh yes,
out of my nose. How cool is that?
Exactly. Like just, I think having a playful attitude towards your growth. And it's not, again, it's not leaving out the trauma that you've experienced. Again, this is part of the golden joinery, right? You're going to be doing it with a playful mindset, like, all right, let's try putting this piece back together. Oh, that's cool. That kind of worked that time. Oh, I like how that looks. Let me try this. Oh, that didn't work so well. Let's try that. But it's all with a upward looking mindset.
And so, this is not spiritual bypassing. I just want to say that it's like, okay, it's the combination of, okay, making space for the wounding to heal, like to really go there, uncover all the grief and all the pain so that and allow it to come to the surface so that it can truly heal. But at the same time, knowing where you want to go and making space for joy. Because if we do this deep inner work, it feels like we are in a pit of despair and we can get really swallowed up in our grief and our pain. And that's all we can see. But we have to work with that, allow it to heal, but also see like, where's the light? Where do I want to be? And taking one little small step towards that and making space for some joy to come in, because that will keep pulling us towards what we really want. And it will also help heal the wounding.
Oh, it will. And I'm telling you, Lynsie, there is joy to be had. It is everywhere if you are open for it. It is literally everywhere. I have been forever amazed by, once my heart opened up, the types of amazing people I met along the way, the stories that we shared together, and the experiences I've had. The world is very rich, and it is literally waiting to hand you all of this love and
so
joy.
many amazing experiences from opening up your heart, because it would be very easy to close it down after the experiences that you've had.
Yeah.
So I'd love to talk a little bit more about that, but we're at our last break of the show. But please don't go anywhere, because we're going to talk a little bit more about joy and how we get more of, and cultivating some of that resilient mindset. And we'll come back to that as well. And again, if you want, join the Women Thriving Unapologetically Facebook group, where you can watch behind the scenes and ask questions that we can answer at the end of the show. So we'll be right back.
Nicely done. All clear. Back in 2.
So Katherine, I noticed a couple times the hair, like there's a little bit. I know it's so hard.
Do I have time to go get an elastic? I can go
you can
grab
just
one.
hold the thing away from your.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just try to keep them back. Okay.
I know you have beautiful hair, so I just.
Well, and especially with all of the humidity recently, it's like,
Lord, woman, I'm telling you. Virginia in July is no joke.
Oh, Virginia. Yeah. So do you think for the next section, I should talk about that bucket list?
Yes, the bucket list. Well, tell me the 2 things that you were going to say. Bucket list and.
Oh, that was it. Just like talking about the bucket list and how I made it happen.
Yeah, I think that would be
that
really
works.
inspiring. People are like, okay, well, how do I do this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that.
Okay.
And yeah, that feels really good.
Okay. Yeah. Did you have any other thoughts though? Because I really want to go with where your intuition is guiding this discussion.
Well, I really love how we started with, okay, the story, and then how, what really needed to happen in order for you to begin the healing process. And then moving towards, okay, these are some of the steps that I took. I think steps are really important for people to hear, because we can say, oh, you can just, you can create this or you can create that, but everyone's like, well, how do you do that? So I would love to hear your take on how you did that.
Okay.
Because it's, it's so varied and so different for each and every one of us.
It really is.
Yeah.
Coming back in just a few seconds.
Okay.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Welcome back, everyone, to Women Thriving Unapologetically. I'm Lynsie, and we're here today with Katherine Nies, and we're talking about, the trauma that a lot of women can experience and how difficult it can be to pull ourselves out of relationships that are very toxic and harming to our bodies and our minds and our hearts, and how we can step into a new way of being and seeing how the shattering of one life can actually lead to a much more beautiful life when we have the courage to pick up those pieces and put them back together again. And so, Katherine, I would really love for you to share with us, like, how did you put the pieces back together again? And what were the tools that you used to create this life where you can see like joy? You're not living in the constant fear. I know you still work with PTSD every single day, but before we left the show, you're like, I see so much joy now. It's everywhere. And I'm like, okay, tell us how.
Yes. The brain is so resilient. It wants, like, your body is so resilient. And I think that's the other really exciting part about the whole journey, is that it wants to be put back together. Your soul wants to be put back together. Your brain wants to feel good. Like, your even though it might feel like your body is working against you, which is certainly how it felt for me with PTSD, the overarching direction every part of you wants to go is towards that light, towards that golden joinery. And so it truly is amazing how with different types of methods, you can reteach your brain to think in a different way, to heal. It's elastic and it wants to heal. So that already feels good to know that it wants to. And so, yeah, so how, I think again, for me, the two key points were creating a bucket list for myself. This was, and I remember making it. I was in bed, which was the only safe place that felt safe to me at the time. Like I was in bed, I had my journal. The whole world was terrifying to me. This was right after a lot of the trauma I'd experienced, and also after my brother had passed. And I was in bed, I had my journal, and I was like, okay, if I could live the life I want, what would it look like? And so I wrote it all down, and I made my bucket list. And the interesting thing about the word bucket list is it's about like what to do before you die. That's why it was like, you kick the bucket, what to do before you die. I felt like I'd already died. And I think a lot of trauma does lead to a certain kind of death. You've already died. You've already lost everything. So for me, it was like a reverse bucket list. It was like, this is for living now. How can I live? I'm someone who likes to think in a visionary scale. So I needed to have that to work towards. And then the practical everyday has to come from a place of very genuine and loving self-talk. And approaching your newfound skill like you would coach a little child. If a little child is learning how to draw, you're gonna be like, good job, keep going. Try those different colors. Oh, if that's not working for you, try something else. And recognizing that healing is not linear. And I think there's going to be days where you're going to feel great, and there's going to be days where you don't, and recognizing that is okay. And I think that was a frustrating thing for me to go through at times, where I felt like I was making so much progress. And then one day I got triggered or something. And then I was like, darn it, like I thought I was doing so well. But the whole point is that you're always going to be headed in the direction of up, even if it doesn't feel that way sometimes.
And I think sometimes people forget that those triggers, or when we feel activated, is just an opportunity to say, oh, there's still some wounding there that needs to be healed, and bringing in that self-compassion and say, okay, this is a part of myself that is still very tender and raw. How can I show her some love today, instead of being like, oh my God, here I am again. That's what I would do. I would get triggered. I'd feel like I'd fall back into that pit of despair, and then I would just berate myself and just bring myself even further down, instead of being like, hey, it's just a way. No one told me that, that's just your wounding, and that needs a little bit more tenderness and a little bit more healing, a little more love. And I think that's beautiful that you're pointing out that, okay, I'm just giving myself love every single day, no matter where I am. And that you can be up one day and down one day, and that can happen within 24 hours, like multiple ups and downs. I mean, how often are we laughing, and the next thing you know, or someone's hurt our feelings and we're crying, and then we're laughing again. And
yes. And the other thing that I love about how kids sometimes go about learning is that they really feel that feeling in the moment, and then they let it go. They're not repressing anything. So like if they dropped something, or they were working on their project and it wasn't working, they went, oh, I'm so frustrated. And then they're like, okay, let me try this. So I like that sometimes. And I think as adults, it's very important to do that, because it's important to be like, oh, this is so frustrating, and let out that emotion in a very, you can do it in a very light giving way, express it through words, express it through however is a very healthy way to do it. Feel that feeling in the moment, and then let it go. And so I did that a lot. I would be like, oh, today did not go the way I wanted to. Okay, let's try it again tomorrow, and so having this uplifting mindset of whatever happened today doesn't have to define what happens tomorrow. That is okay.
And usually my outburst would be more like what I would classify now as sacred rage, where I would just sometimes I would scream so loud and hard that my throat would hurt for more than a day.
Ooh.
It's a little, it was a little intense.
Yeah. Well, it needed to
outlet.
happen.
Yeah.
Needed to happen. I feel like sacred rage can be a very healing thing.
Absolutely.
Yes. And then some honey and lemon water afterwards.
Yeah, afterwards, yeah. But it's very, it's one of those things when I release it, I was like, oh my God, it just needed
to come out,
to be released. And then my body could soften. It wasn't contracting so hard in that moment anymore.
Yes.
Like, okay. I feel, and then I would feel a little silly too.
Yeah.
It felt really good.
Yeah. So for me, the first step was like figuring out how to regulate the emotions of fear. And so I did a lot of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, so that, again, that is an option. Everyone has their own journey about how they want to heal, but that's what worked really well for me, was like diving deep into CBT and learning how to self-soothe. And I definitely want to say that for people who are trauma survivors, or people who are working through anxiety or depression or whatever you're going through, it's really important that the people in your life and your partner or whoever you have close to you is a cheerleader for you in that way. But they are not responsible for your healing. You are. Your partner is not your therapist. Your partner is not your self-soother. They've got their own stuff they need to work on. So your job is to cheer each other on as you work on your own stuff. And I found that to be very empowering, because I feel like for women in particular, or I don't know, maybe everybody, but when you're vulnerable and you're going through a lot, it can be very easy to look for a romantic partner that then it just becomes a trauma bond. The whole point of being there is so that they can be your crutch, so that you don't have to do the work. And
it's not about finding your savior, it's about you saving yourself.
Exactly. Because then when you have your golden joinery together, you can present this beautiful partnership to someone else. I definitely am not saying don't be in a romantic relationship when you're healing. I think with that type of love that the two of you can share, it can be beautiful for both people. But I just couldn't emphasize enough, you are in charge of your own healing journey.
And to get the support that you need. Don't rely on your partner to help you heal.
Yes.
You have to find the external support, so you have someone to hold that space for you.
Precisely.
That's not so emotionally tied to you as well.
Yes. And so that was empowering for me too. It was like, okay, I can do this. I can take the responsibility for my feelings and my choices. And so CBT was really important. Doing something fun every day. And it was, it could be playing in the garden with my daughter. It could be watching a really fun movie that I love, making myself the most delicious cup of hot cocoa. These are really beautiful little moments that you can create for yourself. I like to call them vignettes of your day. So instead of thinking the whole day has to be amazing, think what little vignette can I create for myself today that's really wonderful for me and maybe the people around me too. And then each day you have at least one vignette, and then a vignette becomes bigger and it grows and it grows, and years pass, and suddenly your life has expanded and this golden joinery is exactly where it needs to be. And I promise you it happens. Like if I can go from being terrified in my bed, can't even head over to the local drugstore, to get paper towels, and to now be performing in front of thousands of people, working with hundreds of people every year, coaching, making music. I've traveled, I've done everything on my bucket list, went to Paris, I did it all. And again, it's just from that one little step every day of creating that vignette, that safety for yourself and cheering yourself on along the way.
That is so inspiring, Katherine, to go from the trauma that you were experiencing to just creating that bucket list, like, where do I want to be? What do I want my life to be like? And taking those little steps to get there. And I love how you said, and bringing in the cognitive behavioral therapy, because that's what
Yep.
worked for you. It doesn't mean that's not going to work for everybody, but they have to find what is the support system that I need to help me
Yes.
navigate through and heal this trauma and find my way back to my golden joinery.
Yes.
And fun and have
Yeah. And have fun while you're doing it, because in the end, it's those, yes, don't take yourself too seriously. I feel like it's, life is this beautiful, playful thing in many ways.
So we're
Yeah.
getting very close to the end of our show. So real quick, can you tell us where we can find you? So
Yes, so you can go on my website to see what I'm up to. It's just my name, katherinenies.com. You can also see me on Instagram, just Katherine Nies, if you want to check out my latest projects, pictures of my daughter and me. And then I'm on Facebook too.
okay.
And we're all growing and thriving and learning together. I've still got a long ways to go. My golden joinery is still a process.
And it will be
and
for
it
our
will
whole
always
lives.
be.
Exactly. And just to
Yeah.
have fun with putting the pieces together and making beautiful art for yourself.
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
Katherine, thank you so much for coming on and being so brave and sharing your story and giving us all inspiration to create a beautiful life for ourselves. And don't forget to check Katherine out at katherinenies.com. And just know that just keep making those beautiful vignettes of your day, and they'll expand and they will get bigger and bigger. And pretty soon you'll be living that life that you really, really want and have envisioned for yourself. So be sure to join the Women Thriving community, where you can get to stay connected between the shows and ask our guests questions and get tools and tips from me each week between shows to flourish, prosper, and grow despite life circumstances. So don't forget to join in next week at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. I'm Lynsie McKeown, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Many blessings, my friends.
Awesome show today. All clear.
Thank you so much, Matt.
You're welcome. All right. You both have a great rest of your day.
Thank
as well.
you. You
Thank
too.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So how do you feel?
I feel so uplifted. And I hope
Yay.
you do
Oh,
too.
I love doing this. I just, I find you so amazing, and you're just so beautiful in the way that you share your story and letting everyone know it's okay to be vulnerable and bringing voice to a very painful story that now is a very uplifting and beautiful story.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful you're doing this. I love your show, and yeah,
Oh.
you're just so grounded and radiant. And I'm just so glad I got to meet you at that. I guess it was that coffee meeting like a year ago. I guess.
Yes, that's
Can't
right.
believe it was a year ago already. Yeah.
It is wild how
Yeah.
quickly time is going. So we're still live streaming in the Facebook group. Is there anything that we didn't cover? Is there anything that you would want to share with the ladies in our community?
I think I couldn't emphasize enough. Like, I'm still a work in progress, and I didn't want to advertise my life is now 100% perfect and I have no trauma. Like, that's not at all what it is. It's
No
more
one would
like,
believe it anyways.
yeah,
I hope they wouldn't.
no way. But it's more like, you now, again, I keep going back to the golden joinery. Like, it's that beautiful process that you now feel like you can own and be part of and enjoy while you're healing. And again, if you're always chasing after the light, like that's what it feels like to me now as a light chaser, instead of feeling so unempowered like I did before. So it's mostly like shifting to a place of empowerment that I hope everyone feels like they certainly can get to, no matter what they've gone through. It is there, it is waiting for you.
That is a vision of you holding this beautiful piece of pottery with this golden, this this gold threads going through it, and you're just running towards this beautiful light, holding it.
Yeah.
You're taking ownership. This is my life. It's
Mhm.
precious. I'm not
Mhm.
going to leave it behind. I'm going to hold on to it.
Mm-mm.
It's sacred, and I'm going to
Mm-mm.
carry it with me and
Yeah.
pick other pieces to add to it as I'm going towards that beautiful, uplifting, joyful
Yeah,
life.
it is never too late. I think that's the other thing I really want to emphasize. It is never too late. I have met amazing humans who have started their lives over at age 75, 80, and they're living their
Well, I
best
hope that's
lives
true
right
because
now.
I feel like I'm starting my life over at 50. So,
You
it's not,
know,
which is not true because you always had this foundation that you've created, but I am changing,
of
like
course.
I'm changing the direction of everything that I want to offer in a very different way. But when I say different, then part of me is like, it's not that different. It's always been there. You just had to
Right.
uncover it and learn a little bit more and a little bit more to give you the courage to go towards this one thing that's always been there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And your intuition will 100% guide you along the way.
Yeah. And just to
Mhm.
emphasize that when we're in that state of joy, our intuition is strong, our strongest. And just
Yes.
in the higher, it's not that it's like you said at the beginning, it's not that it's not there, but when we're
Mhm.
in that heavy, dark place, we can be getting intuitive hits, but we're just not able to really see it as that because we're just so mired in our pain. When we start to
Yeah.
put that pain away, we'll start to be able to recognize, oh, okay, now I can start to see the signals of my higher guidance system instead of the signals from my pain and my suffering, and then be
Mhm.
able to follow that like little breadcrumbs. And it takes some time to condition yourself to trust your intuition because all you
Yes.
ever
I'm still
known is that
working on that.
pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am
Totally
too,
still working on that.
because I don't know about you, but I've always like, oh, you read, especially when you read someone's story and they're talking about seeing big signs or hearing voices. And I haven't gotten that. I mean, I take that
Mm,
back. There's been a couple times that I've had big, big signs. I didn't know how to decipher them. And looking
right.
back, I kind of laughed at, okay, how could I not decipher that? But there's too much wounding there. And
Yeah.
but most of the time my intuition is just a knowing.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, I know I need to go work with that teacher. How do I know that? I don't know, but I'm going to sign up for their program.
Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah.
the money right now, but I know I'm supposed to sign up for the program. So I want to sign up for the program and trust that the money will come.
Mhm.
Or, I just know that like when the radio show came about and they offered it to me, there's a whole lot of stuff that came up and then I was like, okay, I know I'm supposed to do this. I've never done a radio show before. I don't know how to do this. And all these little things. So I'm
Right.
sure you have many examples of how does your intuition feel to you? Where do you feel it?
Oh, it's completely in that it's that peaceful sense of knowing that you can't really explain.
Yeah.
And it is so comforting, and to learn how to identify it and where it rests in your body, because it
Mhm.
rests in my body, like right here. Like I feel
Mhm.
it right there, in this space. And then I other fears and other places rest other spots in my body. So it's just amazing once you learn how your body works. It's
Exactly. I
so
love that you
cool.
brought that up. It's like, okay, fear is going to feel different. It's going to have a different frequency,
Mhm.
texture, warmth, vibration
Yep.
to your knowingness, to love, to joy, and it's going to rest in different areas of your body. And
Mhm.
sometimes it can even rest in the same. You can have grief in your heart, but also the joy, but noticing like, okay, it feels differently. It has
Mhm.
a completely different resonance to it. And so that way,
Mhm.
when you're making decisions, you're like, okay, am I moving from fear or am I moving from love?
Mhm.
And so it takes time to really do come back to yourself and understand that your body has so much wisdom. And if we can follow that wisdom,
It
then we're going to
really
be okay.
does. Yeah, and it wants to be heard. And I've noticed that. I think it was another one of your guests, maybe it was the guest that you had last week, who talked about how her back pain stayed with her, and she kept ignoring it. And then eventually she had to say, okay, I see you, I feel you, because your body's trying to get your attention,
Mhm.
like, hello, listen to me.
And
And
it's
then
going to
once
get bigger and bigger
it's going to
until
get
you
bigger and
do.
bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes. Oh, it's such a beautiful thing when you're connected
And
Oh,
then
it's so
such a
good.
beautiful thing to trust.
Yeah, that I'm still working on too, like actually feeling safe enough to let go.
Hmm.
That's really hard for me sometimes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think, like you said, uh, it's going to vary each day. Some days we trust more, and some days we're like, hell no, trust at
Mhm.
all. And
Yeah.
it's always going to be a work in progress, but it can be a beautiful, fun, and joyful work in progress.
Oh yes. Yes, it's very exciting.
So, would you mind in the Facebook group writing, putting in the notes, the golden joinery? I didn't write down or didn't know how to spell the Japanese word
Oh
for it.
yeah. Yes,
And
absolutely.
maybe
So
even the song that the woman created.
yes, it's such a fun, it's like a very fun dance song. So it's very joyful. And
Good.
I
Loves music suggestions.
yeah, so I will suggest yes. My daughter and I dance to it all the time. It's just very like pop upbeat and it's a beautiful piece of music.
Perfect. Yes.
Mhm.
And so, for everyone that's still listening, just know that and you're local to Charlottesville, you can totally join in. I mean, you're sharing your gifts. You can go down to your studio and take some lessons and connect to your own voice. There's so many different offerings that you have to give to our community. So I hope everyone will reach out to you and continue to be inspired by you. So
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Catherine. And I look forward to seeing you soon in person again. Hopefully it
You
won't be another
too.
year.
Oh yes, let's grab coffee together sometime. That'd be
Okay.
cool.
I would absolutely love that.
And thank
Okay.
you for
I
your
love you.
beautiful show.
Much love to you. Bye, everyone. See you
Bye.
next week.